Welcome to the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top founders and experts in the e-commerce industry and take an in-depth look at the struggles and successes in growing e-commerce brands profitably.
Hey guys, Josh Shin here. I'm the host of the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top experts in the e-commerce industry, and we go behind the scenes of the struggles and successes in growing a brand. This episode is brought to you by Chronos.agency. If you are a direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand that is ready for next-level growth and to unlock the optimal customer lifetime value through email marketing, Chronos is your company. We've helped hundreds of brands get over $70 million in return from email alone, and our clients get an average of 3,500 ROI, a 3,500% ROI from our efforts. We've worked with brands like Truly Beauty, Elia Skin, and many more. For some reason, Charles, beauty brands and apparel brands are just attracted to me. It has nothing to do with my fashion sense, as you can tell. But the next step is to email us at sales@chronos.agency. You can go to chronos.agency to learn more. And before introducing today's guest, I just wanted to give a big thank you to Ezra Firestone and Blue Ribbon Mastermind for making this introduction. Go check out their website at smartmarketer.com. Ezra and his team specializes in e-commerce education that helps your brand grow at every stage. And today's guest is someone really special. Dr. Charles Livingston is a Board Certified Chiropractic Physician, a certified nutritionist, and a wellness practitioner based in Indiana. Dr. Charles Livingston, aka Dr. Charles, has a very strong passion for helping others become their best version of themselves and to be as healthy as possible, which has led him on a journey to take a beverage that 50% of the population drinks on a daily basis and make that the healthiest, cleanest, tastiest version on the planet. And from that, Lifeboost Coffee was born. Lifeboost hit 271 on the Inc. 5,000 for the 5,000 fastest growing companies in the US, and it's still growing. Aside from that, his achievements include selling over $100 million online. We'll get into that in a little bit. He's consulting with multiple 7-8-figure companies. He's had a #1 clickbank digital product called Fat Loss Factor, which had $12 million in revenue in the first year. He co-founded a supplement company from scratch, took it to 8 figures, and he has spent the last 10 years doing online marketing, email marketing, and e-commerce, creating multiple 6, 7, and even 8-figure businesses. Dr. Charles is also an adoring husband, a loving father, a great friend with one of the brightest smiles you've ever seen. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you, man.
Awesome. Let's get into it. I'm super interested in your journey to where you are today, from being a chiropractor to running multiple online businesses and e-com brands. How did that transition happen? What was going through your mind in that?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question. And it all started with a friend of mine, one of my best buds I've known since kindergarten. So we, went to high school together, went to college together. I went off to chiropractic school. He just started doing stuff online after that. And by the time I was out of chiropractic school, he was already a millionaire. And I was $100,000 in debt. And we grew up since kindergarten. So I was like, what did you do? Because I'm like, holy crap, I'm $100,000 in debt from school and you're already a millionaire. And so, I followed his journey for another 5 years while I practiced chiropractic. And finally he's like, dude, let me show you the ropes. You'll make more money. You'll have less stress. You'll be able to travel. You'll be able to have a lifestyle instead of being, stuck in a clinic, which is what I ultimately wanted. I loved chiropractic. I loved helping people, but I did not want to be stuck in one place. I wanted to be able to travel and, go to masterminds and things like that. And so he literally started me in customer service of software. At this point, I knew nothing about online. I knew barely knew anything about computers. And I was doing customer support, helping people learn SEO and stuff through a software, right? So my learning curve went like this. I literally had to just devour as much knowledge as I possibly could in a short time frame and then just learn from trial and error. And eventually, I caught on. Me and him partnered on a product, which was Fat Loss Factor, which was it took us I don't know, a couple years maybe, and we finally got it tweaked enough to where we hit #1 on ClickBank, which at that time was the dominant digital platform for ebooks. Right now, it's obviously Kindle. But yeah, we held that for 2 years. We drove like 8 figures in revenue from that, and from there, the rest is history. I fell in love with it and fell in with marketing, and got into a bunch of groups like Ezra's group and some other masterminds, and just networked and just created a bunch of amazing, or met a bunch of amazing people, and created some really true, valuable friendships through that as well.
That's incredible. That's amazing. And this, well, obviously this isn't your first rodeo. It's not, Lifeboost Coffee isn't your first brand. And in your experience growing multiple businesses, obviously eventually exiting them or transitioning from one to the other, what has been consistently the #1 thing that gave you the most traction and results in business? Kind of looking back at what you've done.
The one, that's a great question. And I would say the one thing that gave me the best results is focus. The times when I look back and I see that I'm trying to do like 5 or 6 different things at a time, I could get nothing to work, because you're just like treading water on everything. And then you feel like you never have time. You feel stressed. It's constantly on your mind that you got to be working on something. If you're not working on this business, you got to be working on this business. And when you start online, you think that you can do everything, because you can do a lot of stuff by yourself. You can run super lean online. But the problem is that you spread your focus so thin that you don't really move the needle in anything. So for me, that was like the #1 needle mover. So each one of those businesses that grew were the ones that at that point in my life, I put a ton of focus on.
When you talk about focus, are you talking about focusing on one specific project at a time, or is it kind of one thing in the business at a time? Or does it?
It's both. So one thing I would say is you need to figure out what your strength is. My strength, I am a back-end marketer. I am a master email marketer. Like I pour my heart and soul into email from the beginning. And I've always done it, and I absolutely love it. So for me, that's my strength. I'm not, I do funnels and things like that, but I'm not the best copywriter. I can do copywriting. I'm not, the best copywriter. I'm not the guy who's driving ads. I'm the guy that you give me the customer, and, I will multiply that.
That's beautiful. That's music to my ears.
I know it is.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that you put such a heavy emphasis on email. I think a lot of brands just miss out on that opportunity by, just not paying enough attention to it.
Yeah.
But I really agree with you. That resonates a lot with me. I am someone who isn't too great with numbers. My strength lies in building relationships and just looking at the big picture and thinking about what's next. And that's a really defined small piece of the business. What do you then do with everything else that is required of building an 8-figure brand? Do you find a partner? Do you spend a lot of time hiring, training? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So the other aspect for me is that I work best partnered with somebody. Like, some people are amazing by themselves. I have always found that whenever I've done a project when it was just me, I'm missing that iron sharpens iron aspect, right? That person who's like constantly pushing me and that I don't want to let down, right? So I don't know why. I guess it's just the way I'm wired, that I just work better as, with a partner than I do like doing it all myself.
Gotcha. This is really interesting. When you look at working with a partner, do you look at the strengths and traits that your potential partner might have and how it complements yours, or is it more on the opportunity itself of working with someone amazing that you look at first?
So I definitely look at the person and what their strength is, and it needs to not be my strength. Like if it was another person that was just like me, it would be a terrible partnership because we would both suck at driving traffic, right? Or getting things lined up and finding that traffic person to drive the traffic. So I'm what you call like a back end marketer. So when I partner with people who are like executioners and people who fast movers that are willing to work on that conversion rate and work on that sales funnel with me so that we can, create that perfect situation. And so we can actually buy traffic. Right. So So for me, I look for a front end person who has those characteristics.
Gotcha.
And it's one of those things where I'm kind of attracted to them. So it was easy. They just kind of fell in my lap. Both of my partners had very similar personalities when it comes to that part, or a couple of them. Yeah. So
interesting. So do you attribute that success in finding the right partner to just that attraction factor of just being who you are when you go to events and being online, or is it an intentional search that matters more for a partner that works?
They were not intentional. My first partner was my buddy who got me into online marketing. So I knew his personality. I've known him since kindergarten. I knew how he thought and how he worked. And I'm very good at understanding that and like matching my strengths, to cover the weaknesses, and like being able to take care of the stuff that they don't, right? That their focus is over here working on this, and my focus is over here. And that, so for me, my other partners I just met at events, honestly. That's incredible. And that now, like, I think those are some of the best partnerships. It's just, that's why I think it's super important that you're always a part of a mastermind, like Ezra's mastermind. Because there's so many great people there, and you never know if it's them or if they know somebody who will be like, hey, I've got somebody you need to meet.
That's great advice. That's great advice.
Out there, right?
Just putting yourself out there and just not hiding behind the shadows of building a business. I think a lot of entrepreneurs entrepreneurs come in all shapes and sizes. There are people who are extroverted, people who are much more introverted. And what's your advice for someone who may not be too keen on just meeting new people in general? Because you're one of the friendliest guys I know, and you're one of the most well-connected guys in e-com that I know. What's your take on that? Kind of looking, if you had to kind of take a step back and look at
So a couple different things on that. If you're an introvert and you hate doing that stuff, whenever you hate doing something, that's usually a sign that you should be doing it, right? So you need to put yourself out there. And even if you set goals for yourself, like just focus on meeting one person. If it's like that much of a fear to like put yourself out there, just start with one person. Then the next time be like, I'm going to meet one more person this day, right? That's it. If that's just baby step your way into it, but just put yourself in the situation where you can meet people. Right? It's one of those things where it's such a viable, easy thing to do. You just need to be there, because who knows if you're an introvert and you meet somebody and they introduce you to somebody else and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's a great copywriter, he's a great designer, or he has this great idea for a business, he's looking for somebody, I think you guys would be perfect. So you didn't do any talking, they just you were just there in that moment, right?
That makes sense.
Just putting yourself out there, man.
That makes sense. And I think that's great advice. Kind of creating structures around, or goals around what you're trying to achieve, especially for someone who that don't find networking or meeting new people just a regular thing of your lifestyle. That's just great advice. Now let's take a slight shift to your business, Lifeboost Coffee. Now I've personally tried Lifeboost Coffee at Blue Ribbon St. Pete, and it was amazing. It was, and I think I told you this, that it is one of the only espressos that I've had that doesn't give me a crash pretty much immediately afterwards, and it doesn't mess with my my stomach acid and stuff like that. And it's incredible. I didn't know this, but after the fact, it is it is a very low acid coffee that is also organic, and it's free from basically what we call mycotoxins that comes from mold on the coffee. Do you want to speak a little bit to that, and how do you find out about this in the first place? Was it a personal issue that you have, or with coffee, or was it some observation that you made?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I will give the thanks to Dave Osprey, the Bulletproof executive, right? From Bulletproof Coffee. Yeah. He actually awakened me to like the coffee world and, you know, a lot of the nuances and a lot of the dangers and pitfalls. I was never really a coffee guy. You know, I drank Starbucks and, you know, a lot of the foofy drinks before that. It was like super low with sugar and I would never feel great afterwards, right? So then I started to do Bulletproof Coffee with, I'm not a black coffee drinker. I usually put like, you know, cream, and his whole thing is like putting butter in the coffee and MCT oil, which I did that for a while. Then I created my own variation of that for Lifeboost. But, you know, he awakened me to mycotoxins and understanding, which is basically it's mold. A lot of those, you know, I can't remember the data. I think it was like 70% of coffee beans have mold on them. So it's just, you know, it's one of those things where my whole goal is to make sure that you decrease the amount of toxins you put in your body, right? So yeah, I mean, some of them, they say that some of them, you know, a lot of that gets burned off with the roasting process. Yes, but you're still getting some. So this is why we third party test. And we have like, we created a process that we call Trust Pure. That's like a list of like 14 different, you know, things we check off to make sure that, you know, our coffee is what it says it is, right? And one of the things we do is we test for mycotoxins to make sure it's, you know, negligible to where it's going to affect you. So, and the other thing is it's kind of weird because with coffee, it's one of the things that happens is that I guess the US has their laws for importing coffee is much more lax than Europe. So what happens is if it doesn't pass Europe, a lot of times they'll send it to the US.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
I think Europe is much more strict when it comes to that.
I see.
So I'm like, I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm like, okay.
That's interesting. So I'm not sure if you know this, but where I'm from in Singapore and Malaysia, we have a very different coffee culture. I mean, it's a very common thing for adults to drink coffee in the morning. We call it kopi o. It just means coffee without milk. That's kopi o. Oh, it's a Chinese dialect that means u, which means dark, essentially. So
you drink it black.
Yeah, black coffee, right, with a little bit of sugar. That's a variation of the coffee. But the beans that we use in this area, it's really cheap. It's very cheap coffee. It's I believe it's Robusta beans. Beans. So they're really, really cheap and very bitter. And the taste of coffee isn't what people go for in the morning. It's just part of a ritual, of a routine, right?
Yeah. That energy bump.
Yeah. So I'm curious as to what your ritual looks like in the morning. I mean, 50% of the world drinks coffee on a daily basis. That is incredible.
Crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy. That's something I didn't know. And for something that is kind of such an essential part of just the human condition, I think it's pretty important to, well, personally, I think it's pretty important to put something that's high quality and healthy into your body every single day. What's
Yeah.
your routine in the morning? What's a typical day for you?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So when I get up right now, I just started doing this. I take something called modified citrus pectin, which is, so I just dump a scoop of that in water and I'll chug it because it's bitter and gross, but it binds the toxins. And so it allows you to flush toxins out of your body. So I started that. Then I'll usually do a greens powder, which is like powdered fruits and vegetables.
Right.
I'll either do that or a kombucha, which is like fermented, tea that it's got probiotics and stuff in it. So I'll do one of those, and then usually around 10 o'clock is when I have a coffee, and then I'll have like, I always just cycle through my coffees because I always want to just be tasting all the different variations and making sure they're on point and that. So what I do is I'm a big cold brew fan. So I'll cold brew my coffee. And then, from there I'll add, collagen and MCT oil, and we'll blend that together with the cold brew. And then I'll dump some heavy whipping cream. Heavy whipping cream is, in my opinion, better than butter because it has more immune properties and it doesn't raise your cholesterol. So I use an organic heavy whipping cream. So it makes this absolutely delicious coffee that I look forward to every single day. And so I don't eat in the mornings. I intermittent fast. So I don't usually eat till like 1 p.m.
Gotcha. That's actually a very similar routine. I intermittent fast as well. What is what has been, I know that kind of morning rituals and morning routines tend to change over time. I guess not so much this year where we're all kind of stuck at home, especially when you're traveling. What has been the number one thing that doesn't change no matter what you do, no matter what changes goes on in your life? That's always stays.
Probably the coffee. For real. Like if I'm traveling or something, like the first thing I think about is like, where am I going to find good coffee from? Or I bring my own, right? So
yeah. Do you have travel versions of Lifeboost, or are you, for example, like little sachets? I've seen versions of like little filter pre-built.
So I've toyed around with it. I have the ability to. I haven't yet. We have so many things on our plate that I have not got to it yet. So I'm still contemplating whether I want to do trial versions or not, because we're very customer focused on our business. So if somebody doesn't like it, we're just like, return it to us. We'll give money back.
Right.
I'm not gonna make you keep something that you don't like. So we'll either give credit, or we give a 30-day guarantee. So they have plenty of time to figure out if they like it or not. Yeah.
A 30-day guarantee, even if I've opened wow, okay.
And guess what a refund rate is?
What is it? Is it like 1%?
0.6.
0.6%.
Yep.
0.6% refund. That's incredible. So that's 99.4% of your customers are 100% happy because they have the option, right? They have the option of just sending it back.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I like that. Is that a core value or a core principle of yours, that customer centricity?
100%. Yeah.
Does it resonate throughout your entire team?
It does. What I told my team is that we're a yes company. So that's kind of one of our mantras. One of the things we go by is we're a yes company. So whatever you have to do to make the customer feel good, do it, right? If they need to exchange, if they need to return, whatever it is, just make it easy on them. Just make them happy. And then the big, blowback or the pushback on that is, oh my gosh, you got all these people who are going to try to scam you and stuff. When they're trying to scam you, right? Like it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
So you can just tell them their demeanor and what they say. Then, you either be like, we're only going to do this one time only, or you just, blacklist them or whatever you need to do if they're like crazy.
Right.
So,
right. That's really interesting. I mean, a 30-day guarantee is, especially for a consumable like coffee, is because you can't reuse coffee, right? You can't repackage that and sell. It's once it's used, it's used.
yeah.
What are the core values or core principles that has guided you in growing your business till today?
Yeah. So for me, it's like me personally or the business or both or.
Both. I think what I'm interested in understanding is what has guided you in building your business, and as well as what have guided your team and your company as a whole.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things I'm huge on is just treat others like you want to be treated. The golden rule, right?
Yeah.
Treat people like you want to be treated. It's not rocket science. So it's that, just be kind above all else. It's really easy to get, especially this or 2020, right? It's very easy to get very emotional about all the craziness in the world and politics and, all this stuff. So above all, you just need to remember that, despite those type of beliefs, we're all human. We all deserve to be loved and cared for, and we all still have things in common, right? So focus on the commonality with each other and focus on working together instead of, tearing each other apart, because nothing will ever get done when you're tearing each other apart like that. So that's one thing that we're always talking about. The other is just doing random acts of kindness for people, right? So we'll, like, for instance, one of the things we do with our company is, I'll send an email out and be like, hey, if you're a first responder or something and you have, if your hospital or whatever needs some coffee, let us know. We'll send some over. So that will send some to the military. We've taken some to different fire stations around locally, as well as like Texas, and any firemen who are customers who hear about us doing that and then ask for the firehouse. We'll do things like that. Just helping each other, right? Another big one for me is to do what you say you will do. And this is like one of the core values I pass down to the team as well, is just, if you're going to be on my team, if you're going to work with me, you need to do what you will say you will do. Right. Super important. I live by that mantra. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I will do it. And I try to get it done in a timely manner. Nobody's ever 100% perfect. But the goal is to just make sure that you do what you say you will do. So those are two very important things for me.
Gotcha. That's really, really cool. I see that. Well, obviously your company's values have to come from your values to some degree. Where has that come from? It's very interesting to see a company that's done so well do good, really well as at the same time. And I think it's it's counterintuitive to some people that companies that do well can also do good in a sustainable way. Where did that come from? What's your guiding? Are there mentors that you kind of look up to in these principles, or rather, where's that origin from?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a Midwest, from a small town in the Midwest. So country bumpkin or hick or whatever you want to call it, that redneck, that's where I'm from. So small town USA. So our core values were very, take care of your neighbors, saying be kind, because it's a small town. So if you don't, then everybody talks and then you get labeled, right? So, but I mean, I grew up in a Christian community. So I guess by religion, I'm Christian. So a lot of those values will just come through. It just ran through all of my companies. So, but, now it's just like all the mistakes I made in the past, I try not to repeat again. So they've all just kind of accumulated. And so on this journey I'm on right now, I'm trying not to repeat old mistakes.
That's awesome. Talking about mistakes, what is the number one mistake that you have made in building Lifeboost Coffee?
Oh man, the number one mistake that I've made building Lifeboost. That's a good question.
Or rather, what was the best failure that you've had?
The best failure that I've had
Yeah.
in Lifeboost or in general?
Whichever stands out to you.
Okay, so I guess for me, it was, not focusing on something and getting shiny object syndrome. And so like we built, like for instance, the fat loss factor, we built it up. We were doing 8 figures a year. But then, we hit some rough patches, and instead of like digging deeper, we kind of let it die. Right. So is because one of those things that a good business is boring. And so as an entrepreneur, it's very hard for you to be bored, or it's very easy for you to get bored. And then you look for that next shiny thing. And so there's, there's so many just different shiny objects that I chased that, I failed at. And, if I would have stuck with something that I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have been an 8-figure business easily, different things like that.
Gotcha.
So that's why I said that focus was a big one for me, just really putting a lot of intention and focus and going deep instead of like wide, right, with your stuff. Because you get the, build the multiple streams of income and stuff. But in order to do that, you need to have one deep well that provides for you. Then once you have a good base and you have a team around you that you can open up, you just need to make sure that you're doing it in a responsible way. Because if you ever try to shotgun something, it like 99.9% never works out to what you think it's going to work out to.
It's really interesting. That's really interesting because that's very similar. I have a very similar experience to that without the successes. Well, Chronos is actually my first company and my first business, as well as my first job. So it became kind of essential for me to just hunker down and focus on just building the company, building the agency well, and serving the clients that we have well to the best of our abilities. And that turned out to be a really good decision, even though we had to say no to tons of opportunities and ideas that could have been a major success, but would have derailed us from our key focus as an agency. And it turned out well. I mean, it's first business and all. So with Lifeboost, looking forward into just this year, right, in 2021, are there any shiny objects in your horizon, in your
outside of Lifeboost
eyesight right now? Yeah, for you right now, anything that you would think is.
I mean, there's always shiny stuff, but like I've done what you've done and just put the blinders on, and I've just, I know now it was very hard at first. But now as I see the growth and I see what happens when I put intention and focus, like deep focus on something, the growth that happens, and just the deeper understanding of the business and of business in general, right, that you get, there's definitely power in that. So knowing that, now it's less easy for me to get derailed from any shiny object. So at this point, no.
Gotcha. So that comes with experience.
Yeah, it took me a long time, 10 years to learn.
Got it. You mentioned a good business is a boring business. A boring business is a good business. What is currently boring to you, but deep down you know that in building Lifeboost, right? That that it's super important and super impactful that you should keep doing, but you just hate doing. Is there anything like that?
Like boring things like, making sure you're staying on top of the numbers and the analytics and, financials and, really focusing on being data driven and not just emotional driven and what you think and, digging into the trends. And because it's easy to like see another company do product and think that, oh my gosh, this is amazing what they've done. I want to do this too. And then you try to do something similar, but you don't really know the depth of the research that they put into it to figure out if it was successful, because it may not be. They could be in the testing mode still. So it's just like things like that. But yeah, I mean, with Lifeboost right now, like I'm absolutely in love with the business. Like I said, I think we talked about this previously, that just so many different things I want to do with it still. One of my favorite things to do is product development. I just absolutely love that. So for me, it's just like planning that out for the future is one of the non-boring things. So I spend a lot of time on that. Like I said, it's more the analytics, because I'm like you, I'm not the numbers guy. So I'm more the visionary, the creator, and the back end guy.
Gotcha. It's incredible. Who are your mentors, and have they evolved over time, or has there been mentors that you go back to again and again?
Great question. So one of my mentors used to be Oprah's financial planner. And I've been with this guy. He's worth like, I don't know, like $600 million or something.
Wow.
But he's, just a real down to earth guy, and just really is like bought and sold, like, I don't know, like 30 different businesses. So he's been through the whole gambit.
Wow.
And I mean, he's done it all. So whenever I need advice and, about these type of things, I always go to him. And then, him, obviously, like guys like Ezra, he's, a friend and a mentor, just somebody that like I'll go to for advice for things. And my business partner is my best bud, who got me into it. I keep a council of people, right? So depending on the question, depending on, what I'm doing, depends on who will ask. Or if it's like a big decision, like, hey, should I sell, like if I'm selling the business, right? And I get an offer, I would pass it by all of them and be like, what do you think? Good or bad? Before, that's my first step. And then you do your, obviously send it to your lawyer and stuff. But I keep a council of people who are much smarter than me.
A council of people who are much smarter than you.
Yeah.
That's incredible. How do you begin that relationship with a potential mentor?
One, I paid to play. A lot of the money I made, I poured right back into my own personal education. Like I've spent, oh my gosh, like a few years, I've spent like 50 to 100,000 simply on just education, just for me, and just learning and growing, and trying to break into circles of people that I wanted to meet, things like that. So you got to be willing to pay that and understand that there will be halo effect from that, and the fact that you just getting it in there is the first step, and just getting to know people. And I mean, if you're nice and kind and not a weirdo and like act all like either starstruck or act just super awkward, then you don't have a problem with anybody. So I mean, you just be nice. Like I said, it's not rocket science. You just be nice to people. That's all you got to do, and then people will just be nice back. And then you can start a conversation. You can start a relationship from the conversation.
I love this. This comes back to your core values and your guiding principles in building a team as well. What's next for Lifeboost Coffee?
So the next step is to focus on selling to a strategic partner to help with growing even more. So we've got we've still got some things that we want to do, but we also know that we're interested in selling and pulling on a strategic partner, because I know that I don't know everything, and my partner feels the same way. we're here, we're having a great time building it. We're taking it as far as we can go with our skills, but ultimately to get to that next level of breaking, we want to go to 100 million. So we're even past 100 million. And in order to do that, there's some strategic pieces that we need to add. So that's kind of the next steps.
That's super exciting. What would an ideal strategic partner look like, or how would you identify a strategic partner?
So it wouldn't be just about, just taking money. They can't just bring money to the table and that's it. It needs to be, somebody who is well-versed in operations, I would say, or who has, logistics overseas or something like that, that can help to accelerate the growth of Lifeboost. Right. So we're not in it just to take somebody else's money.
Gotcha. And 100 mil, that sounds like a really big number. Is that a number that kind of came out of a discussion, or is that
was the plan all along, man?
That has always been a plan?
It's always been the plan. So when my partner and I sat down and discussed what we wanted to do, we're like, we think we can take this to 100 million. So that's, it's one of those things where you shoot for the moon, you'll land among the stars. Even if we don't, it's going to be a great ride. But yeah, we have built out a plan that we think can get us there. So
that's incredible. That's amazing. So let's say that it's the 31st of December, 2021. What must have happened for you to say this has been an incredible year for you personally?
I would say growing the business 50 to 100%. So essentially doubling the business. That's going to be yes, that's what we set out to do. This is, so that's kind of our thing.
That's amazing. Gotcha.
So, and maybe sell, that's, like I said, that was the end result. So even if we do a little bit, if we take off a portion, just for that strategic growth, that strategic buyer, that special someone we're looking for, that we're all looking for, right?
Someone. Aren't we all? Awesome. We'll check in again on that progress, and I think it's going to be really interesting to talk about the process of finding a strategic partner, the process of selling, what parties are involved, because that is where from in my conversations, that's where most brands would want to be at, but typically don't have much of an idea of what that process could look like. So that's going to be really cool, really interesting. Here's a quick one. What was 8-year-old Charles's aspirations? What do you want to do before you were a chiropractor and everything else? What was your childhood ambition?
So when I was 8 years old, oh yeah, I wanted to be a black belt in martial arts. That was my thing. I always knew I wanted to be a doctor at that age, probably because it was this old thing that, a lot of the older generations would say would be Dr. Livingston, I presume. So I would get that every day at school. Some teacher would say that to me. So
what was that? Sorry, what was that phrase?
It was Dr. Livingston, I presume. I think it was from an old Sherlock Holmes show or movie or something.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Literally, the older generations, I heard that nonstop since I was young, all the way through high school, even in college, even people I would meet. Some of the older generations now I meet, that's the first thing they say. Oh, Dr. Livingston, I presume. So I'm like, yep. It was in the stars that I was supposed to be a doctor of something. So
wow, that's incredible. Do you think that if circumstances were a little bit different, and instead of a doctor, people around you were if people around you had expectations for you to be, say, a lawyer, for instance, or scientist, would you have changed in a career path, or do you think it was something that was innate in what
I
you
think it
wanted
was
to do?
innate. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit ever since I was younger. I think I was in sixth grade and I was in a multi-level marketing.
No,
Yeah,
really?
I was selling phone cards because I was before we had, we were all like corded phones and we had to,
Yeah.
type in cards to call long distance if you did like a prepaid phone card, right? So
Yep.
I was selling those in sixth grade to adults. Somehow they would buy them from me. I don't know how I was able to sell those, but I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. So
That
I
is
think one of the things
incredible.
that led me towards some type of owning a business.
That's amazing. Okay, now I would have loved to dive deep into that maybe in the next conversation. But just a couple of final questions, quick one, rapid
Mhm.
fire rounds. Um, what are your favorite books that you're currently reading, or favorite books of all time?
Ooh, great question. I just finished this one, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Ooh,
Um, I gotta get it on Audible because he reads it himself.
no,
It
really?
it's incredible, man. He is such a prolific thinker and a lot of wisdom in there. And it was fun to hear his backstory and how it affected his life. Right. A lot of wisdom in this book for sure. Another great one that I just read, my partner actually introduced it to. Here's a funny story, actually. So my partner introduced me to this author. His name is Trevor Blake, and he wrote this book called Three Simple Steps. And one of the steps that he talked about, because I bought it on Audible, and I was listening to it, and one of the steps he talked about was setting intentions on things, right? And so as he was talking about that, I was like, you know what? It'd be really cool to meet this guy. I bet, he'd have some wisdom on Life Boost and stuff. And so the next day, I'm checking my email, because what I do with my email is I go ahead and I forward all my customer support emails into my personal Gmail account, because it's my way of just scanning real quick. It's a lot, but I
Sounds
scan
like a
it
lot.
so I can see the patterns of what people are complaining about, what I need to fix. And every once in a while, I'll go in, I'll respond to different people, just to help my team out if it's a hard question, or just to, bless them and just give them, because people like sometimes write their life stories in there, or tell me that they're somebody close to them died or something. Because like in my email marketing, I'm very transparent, and I open up about different things like that. And so like I'll respond to people. But I see this name in there and it says Trevor Blake. So I'm like, in my customer support. So I click on it, and like the picture is the same picture as on his book. So I hit reply, and he was like, oh, I didn't get my coffee yet. So I hit reply. I'm like, is this the Trevor Blake who wrote Three Simple Steps? And then like apparently he was on the computer the same time I was, because within like 3 minutes, I get an email back saying, yes, it is. And so I wrote this paragraph. It was like, oh my gosh, man, I literally last night was listening to Three Simple Steps. I set my intention that I would like to meet you someday so we could talk, about Life Boost. And lo and behold, it was him. And I was like, I told my customer service manager, I was like, send this guy some free coffee, make sure he's prioritized, get him whatever he needs ASAP. This guy's a life changer for many, many people. So he needs his coffee.
That's incredible.
But I was like, yeah, I told him that story, and then he ended up talking, using that story as an example on his podcast or whatever. But that was just so crazy.
Do you manage to meet up with him in person?
Not yet. He's in Seattle, so that's on the to-do list. So I'm going to join, I'll probably, he's got like a membership or something, or he's got a couple courses I'm going to go through. I've got it. He actually sent me an autographed copy of his other book, Secrets to Successful Startups. So I'll read that first and then
Nice. Gotcha.
do that. You never know. It's kind of crazy in business. You just never know who drinks your coffee, right?
Trevor Blake
who uses your product.
Yeah. I guess that's one of the perks of just having an incredible product that people love.
Yeah, definitely.
What are some of your favorite podcasts right now that you're listening to?
Favorite podcasts. I took a hiatus from podcasts for a while simply because I had so many books backlogged on Audible that I had to get through.
Okay.
So I took a hiatus on podcasts. Like I like Mike Dillard's. I listen to his. I listen to trying to think who else is it. Dave Osprey's The Bulletproof. I listen to Bethel, which is a Christian. It's a church out in Redding, California. They have a very good message that they just put on the podcast. So I listen to that like weekly. Yeah, I mean, right now those are the ones that I've been listening to that are top of mind. I've got a whole list of them that I was rotating through a bunch of different ones, but I literally had to take a hiatus because there's just not enough time in the day.
It's just too much information. Yeah.
And then I'm doing video courses and, things like that. Like I'm going through Power MBA.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. You've probably heard of that one, haven't you?
I have. I've not been through that.
It was a steal. It was like $750 for a year's worth of content, basically. And they drop, it's like 15-minute videos every single day, 5 days a week. And they run it through an entire year, but they've got like, the CEO of Waze, the CEO of Sugarfina, like all these big companies, they go in and they dissect their businesses and they break it down. It's super simple. There's a lot of good stuff in it. Yeah.
Is it always $750 per year, or was that just a one-time thing?
Yeah, well, it's not. I think it was just for that because it was like a 1-year program, so it's $750 for that year.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I don't know, like if there's a continuation. Like I'm only, I don't know, 4 months into it or whatever, because I think it started in September.
Has it paid for itself? 4 months in?
Yeah. I've definitely got a lot of good data from it and a lot of good insight. And like one of the top things they talk about is like they talked about, like Eric Ries was in there, the lean startup guy.
Nice. Yeah.
I love his methodology, right? The minimum viable product.
Love it. Yeah.
And so that's kind of the framework we base a lot of what we do off of, is starting with a minimum viable product and build it up. And then like they talk about blue ocean strategy, things like that. So that's one of my favorite things is blue ocean strategy. So
very cool. Very cool. What are some of the other brands that you admire in e-com?
Oh man, there's so many in Ezra's group. Oh my goodness. His group has so many rock stars. I love everybody in that group. Like obviously Boom, I think Ezra's done a phenomenal job with that. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest. I'm trying to think of, you put me on the spot, man. I lose marbles there.
You got to pick favorites.
Yeah. Like Boom. I like some, like BioTrust. He's a good friend of mine. The owner of BioTrust, the owners of BioTrust are good friends of mine. Follow them. On It Nutrition. Trying to think who else. True Life. Ryan McKenzie and his group there. Those guys. I think they've done an incredible job. Yeah, there's so many. Like that group is just full of rock stars. So
awesome. And is there anything else that I haven't asked you yet that you feel could be a good value add to the conversation?
I would just say, whatever you're doing or whatever you want to start, do your research, take your time, and then just go after it. Be persistent, take the bumps, learn from them, just keep moving. I mean, I think what separates the people who win and who become successful in this arena are the ones who can stick through it, and just, it's all problem solving, right? It's just solving a bunch of problems. So it's just your ability to have grit and stick with something, you know.
And put your blinders on.
Put your blinders on and not get caught in shiny object syndrome. Awesome.
Charles, Dr. Charles, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Hey, no problem, Josh. Anytime, my man.
Thanks for listening to the E-commerce Profits Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get notified of future episodes.